Hello again, everybody. Lance Smith here, and welcome back to the Bible Difficulties and Answers podcast. This is episode 251. If you missed episode 248, part one of this Korah discussion, go back and listen to that one first. In that episode, we looked at whether Korah was swallowed by the earth or burned by fire. And we saw that Numbers 16 actually describes two separate judgments happening to two separate groups. Today, in part two, we stay right in the middle of the same dramatic chapter. And honestly, this chapter has enough chaos to make a family Thanksgiving dinner look peaceful. The question for today is this: when the earth opened its mouth in Numbers 16:32, were all of Korah's family killed with him, or did only some die? Because if you read the story quickly, it can sound like the entire family line was wiped out on the spot. But later in Scripture, Korah's descendants are still around. In fact, some of them become worship leaders, psalm writers, and eventually ancestors of the prophet Samuel. So, what happened? Did the whole family die, or didn't they? Let's begin with a key verse again from the New Living Translation. Numbers 16:32. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed the men, along with their households and all their followers who were standing with them, and everything they owned. Now, at first glance, that sounds absolute. Households, followers, everything they owned. That sounds pretty final, doesn't it? Except later in Numbers, we get a very important clarification. Listen now to Numbers 26, verses 10 to 11. But the earth opened up its mouth and swallowed them with Korah, and fire devoured 250 of their followers. This served as a warning to the entire nation of Israel. However, the sons of Korah did not die that day. That last sentence changes the entire discussion. However, the sons of Korah did not die that day. So immediately we know this. Whatever happened in Numbers 16, it did not include every blood relative of Korah. And that's important because sometimes people read these Old Testament judgments like a giant spiritual tornado just randomly sweeping up everybody nearby. But the text keeps drawing careful lines between those participating in the rebellion and those separating from it. Norman Geisler and Thomas Howe deal directly with this in the Big Book of Bible Difficulties. They explain that those who perished were Korah's followers and the members of his household who stood with him in rebellion, but not every member of the extended family line. And Numbers 26:11 makes that crystal clear. The children of Korah did not die. And honestly, this is another example of why reading the entire Bible carefully matters. Because sometimes critics will isolate one verse while ignoring later clarification. That's kind of like watching only 10 minutes of a detective movie and then announcing you've solved the whole case. You might want to wait for the ending. Now, here's where the story gets especially interesting. Back in Numbers 16:26, Moses gave a public warning to the people, where he said, "Get away from the tents of these wicked men, and don't touch anything that belongs to them. If you do, you will be destroyed for their sins." That warning mattered, and apparently Korah's sons listened. Asir, Elkanah, Abiasaph, they separated themselves from the rebellion, which in this particular chapter was also a very good survival strategy. And spiritually speaking, that's sometimes the hardest step anybody ever takes. It's a little like stepping off a runaway train while everybody else keeps cheering for the conductor. And that distinction becomes incredibly important because Scripture consistently shows that judgment fell upon those who knowingly joined the rebellion, not automatically upon every relative connected by blood. David Guzik, in his Enduring Word commentary on Numbers 16, points out that a remarkable mercy was shown to this surviving remnant of Korah's family. Their descendants later became temple singers and worship leaders connected to several psalms. Zachary Garris, in his article, The Faithful Sons of the Rebel Korah, at Knowing Scripture, emphasizes that Korah's sons chose loyalty to God over loyalty to their father's pride. That could not have been easy. And let's be honest, standing against family pressure is still hard today. Garris notes that the sons were not counted among the rebellious household because they obeyed Moses' warning and separated themselves from the sin. GotQuestions.org also highlights how God preserved the line of Korah, allowing later generations to bless Israel through worship and music. In fact, the line of Korah would eventually produce the prophet Samuel himself. One of Israel's greatest prophets came from the family line of one of Israel's greatest rebels. That's remarkable grace. Charlie Albright, in his verse-by-verse study in Numbers 16 to 35, Korah Meets His Maker, at superiorword.org, also emphasizes the distinction between those judged and those spared. He carefully walks through the sequence of events and notes that the text itself consistently separates the rebellious participants from the surviving descendants. So we have both judgment and mercy. Two additional resources make this point especially well. From the blog Navigating by Faith, in an article called The Redemption of Korah, the Sons of Korah, focuses on how God brought redemption out of a family line marked by rebellion. And Edge-Induced Cohesion, in Numbers 16:23 to 35, the sons of Korah resist the pull of rebellion, emphasizes the courage it took for Korah's descendants to separate themselves from the destruction surrounding them. And honestly, that phrase really stands out. Resist the pull of rebellion. Because rebellion does have a pull to it. Pride pulls, bitterness pulls, anger pulls. Sometimes sin spreads through families almost like spiritual gravity. And yet, the sons of Korah stepped away from it. They resisted it. And because they did, later generations inherited worship instead of judgment. That family tree started with the ground opening in judgment and later produced worship songs sung in the temple. Only God writes redemption stories like that. That's one of the most hopeful turns anywhere in the book of Numbers. So, when someone asks, were all of Korah's family killed with him? The answer is no. Judgment fell upon those who stood in open rebellion. Mercy came to those who listened to God and separated themselves from the sin. And honestly, that may be one of the most hopeful lessons anywhere in the book of Numbers. Now, next Friday, we're heading into another Bible difficulty. Numbers 20, verse 1. Was Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin or Paran? And yes, believe it or not, there's actually a fascinating answer to that one too. If today's episode encouraged you or helped clear up this difficulty, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at BibleDifficultiesAndAnswers@gmail.com or join the conversation on Facebook. And if you'd like to support the podcast, head over to buymeacoffee.com/Lance Smith. Always appreciated, never expected. All episodes are archived at BibleDifficultiesAndAnswers.podbean.com. I'm Lance Smith, wishing you good health, good study, and God's richest blessings. So long, everybody.